Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new episode of Grounded in Groundshot podcast. Today, it's my highest pleasure and honor to have a very, very special guest. She needs no introduction. Dr. Julie Gralow, she is the Chief Medical Officer of ASCO. She is a professor of breast oncology at University of Washington in Seattle before she joined the ASCO job. I have known Julie for last 8 years, I think. The first time I met you in person was, maybe you forgot about this, but it was in Seattle for the Breast Global Health Initiative meeting in 2018. I was in Boston at that time. And yeah, I have been a big fan of all your work even before you joined ASCO. So this is not a I'm not saying this because Julie is ASCO CMO. Is what I mean to say. I have known you from before you were ASCO CMO, and I know how inspirational your journey is. And the focus of our podcast is not just about, to talk about specific issues related to oncology, but most of our audience are young people, trainees, yeah, from LMICs as well as from high income countries, who are looking for the human behind the name. So, what is the person Julie Gralow like? How she became what she is today, and what lessons we can learn from her journey. And I think Julie embodies the philosophy of this podcast very well because I have heard Julie give talk in multiple forums, and I can say this for a fact that she is a great role model for people out there. And of course, we'll get to know more about her journey as we talk. But her story should certainly inspire many people to take up a career not only in oncology but also global oncology, and also to be a great mentor, which is one of the main focus for us at BG Lab as well as for the audience of this podcast. So, Dr. Grelo, I introduced you to my audience in different ways, but how do you introduce yourself?
Wow, it depends on who the audience is. I mean, my title now is Chief Medical Officer at the American Society of Clinical Oncology, but I am Professor Emeritus at the University of Washington in medical oncology. As you say, I was a breast medical oncology and ran the breast program there for years. I am an adjunct professor of global health at the University of Washington. And I'm a former executive officer for the SWOG National Clinical Trials Network that's supported by the USNCI. I oversaw breast and lung cancer. So I still use that in my introduction because it tells you a little bit about my background. It's breast oncology, the clinical piece, and then the clinical trials piece, the SWOG, and then the global health piece, where I also mentored students in the Department of Global Health at the University of Washington.
So it's very interesting that it was not just global oncology, but global health in general. So can you tell us a bit about how, from a career in medicine, you got inspired into a career in oncology and specifically global oncology?
Well, I was an undergrad
Uh-huh.
student and planning to go to med school. And everything was open. And I had just met my now husband as we were graduating from college. And so we said, let's wait a few years to apply to medical school and see if we're going to apply together or separately. And so we said, let's take gap years. And back in that era, this was the early 1980s, you didn't take gap years usually.
Yeah.
But so we said, let's get a little experience under our belt in medicine, in biotech, whatever, and then we'll make the decision to apply to medical school in a couple of years. So I ended up, just by chance, getting a job as a technician in an oncology lab at Stanford. That's where we were undergrads.
Like a bench technician doing
Bench
wet
technician.
lab research. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
a bench technician. And I used a pipette and I was hired to make hybridomas, monoclonal antibodies. This was the beginning. We had just figured out how to make monoclonal antibodies in the lab. So I joined this oncology lab and was part of the crew that helped all the fellows and the researchers in the lab do the bench work. And it was the coolest thing in the world because we made some antibodies in that lab back in the early to mid 80s that actually went into human lymphoma patients and we saw some responses the
Wow.
earliest days. And I
So
said,
even before you were a doctor.
oh,
Yeah.
right. I hadn't even gotten into med school yet, but I said, oncology is the coolest field in the whole world because I could see the work done in the lab directly translating into benefit in humans, and I could see how far we had to go with the research and
Yeah.
developing the next steps and how rewarding it was. And so I applied to medical school then with my husband a couple years later. And from the beginning, I said, I'm going to go into oncology. And I drove my medical school classmates crazy because none of them knew what they wanted to do. And they said, you are so directed. But I knew, and I wavered a little bit. I really liked pediatrics when I did that rotation and
Yeah.
some of the other rotations.
Sorry to interrupt. You mean you were married before you went to med school?
I was with my husband, and then we got married in
Okay.
med school. We eloped to
Okay.
Hawaii during med school. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's yeah, I think that also makes your journey even more interesting and challenging both in a
Right.
sense
Two
because
two
yeah,
careers. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Sorry, I interrupted you
No,
because I wanted to
that was
clarify
it.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it. So that was my interest in oncology.
Okay.
And it really proved true what a rewarding field to be and how much the early basic lab research that we then translate to the clinic and then back again, things we see in clinic and we say, why is this happening? And we go back and study it in the lab.
Yeah.
It's still a fascinating career. I would hope the early career, the trainees listening to this podcast would think of it in that way, as opposed to what some say is, oh, it's cancer patients, they die. We
Yeah.
all die.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I have had the most rewarding relationships with my patients and their families throughout my career.
No, that's a very fascinating story. So when did you say give up on pipetting?
Well, that's a good question because it is true. Even so, then I did my residency in internal medicine, and then I did my fellowship in medical oncology in Seattle, where I have stayed since. And I still thought at that point I could do it all. I could be a lab researcher, I could see patients in clinic and be excellent at both. And during that fellowship, I spent time in the lab. I realized I really liked the clinical piece more. And instead of doing the basic lab research, I wanted to do clinical trials. And I had a great mentor, my department chair, Dr. Bob Livingston, who was a clinical trialist.
Yeah.
And he kind of took me under his wing and got me involved in the SWOG, National Clinical Trials Network.
So you
And
were like a hardcore clinical trialist for a number of years.
yep, yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I saw I couldn't do all of that
Yeah.
and have a family life.
Yeah.
And I really liked the clinical trials piece.
Okay. And the pivot to global oncology and global
No,
health from there?
that was not a pre-part of my plan.
Okay.
I wasn't even on my radar.
Mhm.
I knew my friends that went into infectious disease and some in reproductive health were doing global, but that was what global health was at the
Yeah.
University of Washington. So in 1997, I got approached by a local nonprofit in Seattle, PATH. It stood for Program for Appropriate Technology in Health. Now it's just PATH. They approached me and said, we are going to apply for a USAID Ukraine Breast Cancer Assistance Project grant. We already have a good base for vaccines in Ukraine, but we don't have any expertise in cancer.
I see.
And you're in Seattle, we're in Seattle. Would you be our medical oncology consultant? And I said, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things just popped up and I said, that sounds interesting. I'll try it. So for 3 years, and then we extended it a fourth year, I was a medical oncology consultant. It was a program, so USAID funded it, PATH conducted it, University of Washington played a strong role, and then the Ukrainian Ministry of Health was a partner. And we went over there, and the first year it took to say, what are they doing in breast cancer in Ukraine? It took a year to really try to build a relationship of trust and really talk about what was happening
Yeah.
in the country. And then the next couple of years were, how can we develop some projects that will be sustainable when the project ends? It's not just going to be buy them a machine or
Yeah.
something that's going to break down.
Hmm.
What are projects that would be sustainable? Most of it capacity building, education, all
Yes.
of that after we leave that would really impact. It was a true partnership, and I
So
thought
your first sort of geographical location
was Ukraine.
was Ukraine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I went over there several times a year for 4 years. And one of the most sustainable projects, which was led by my colleagues in the School of Nursing at the University of Washington, was was about communication between patients and their care team. So the first trip I made to Kyiv, I went with the other members of the PATH team, and I was met on the steps of the cancer hospital, the National Cancer Institute in Ukraine. And there was a reporter and a camera crew. And they said to me through an interpreter, tell us about this Ukrainian project, but don't use the word breast and don't use the word cancer.
Because of
Because
the
that was
cultural taboo.
exactly.
Okay.
And
Uh-huh.
I just said to my interpreter, I'm going to answer this and you will figure out how to substitute the breast and the cancer into this. So that was the culture. If you read Solzhenitsyn's Cancer Ward, it's exactly, what was happening at the time. And it was a paternalistic
Yeah.
thing in many ways. But, the teachings under the Soviet era were you don't tell somebody with a potentially fatal diagnosis that they have a potentially fatal diagnosis because they'll give up all hope.
Yeah, no, that's still the prevailing thought in like my home country of Nepal.
Yeah.
And when I used to practice there, so this was back in 2018, when I was practicing there as a medical oncologist, we used to have the patient's relatives or like son, daughter come before the patient did to the clinic and tell me beforehand that my dad has cancer, but please don't tell him that.
Yep.
We haven't told him. If you tell him that, he will lose all hope and he will give up. Just make up something so that he undergoes treatment, but don't tell him that he has cancer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, it's so interesting because, of course, that is not the US model.
yeah,
Informed consent,
exactly.
joint decision making. So we had to step back and respect the culture and understand it. But these patients were in the cancer hospital. That was the
Yeah.
name of it. They were on a ward that said chemotherapy ward. They
Yeah,
knew
yeah,
they had cancer,
yeah,
but they would ask the doctor, I have cancer, don't
yeah,
I? And would be told,
yeah,
you just have a bad infection of the breast, we're
yeah,
going to have to remove it. And then afterwards, they'd be told, now we're going to give you potent antibiotics that are going to cause your hair to fall out.
yeah,
And of course, they knew they
yeah,
had cancer, and so they didn't have the opportunity
yeah,
to have dialogue. So again, we weren't going to come in and say the right way to do something is the way we do it in the United States, but we talked with a few doctors, a few nurses, and a few patients and said, would you like to work on maybe some communication tools, some patient education tools, and practice and see how this goes?
yeah.
And so we got a group who was interested in doing this and worked for about a year and held a conference with the doctors, with the nurses, with some of the patients, and they all talked about it. And it really just exploded. And support groups, which were unheard of, cancer support groups were unheard of, back in 1997. By 2001, they had formed across most of the country this Amazonka support group. The mythologic Amazonian women cut off a breast to better shoot their bow and arrow. So they were
Really?
yep. So they were the Amazonki. And in most of the oblasts, the counties, regions in Ukraine, they had representation. And in 2001, they got
That's mind blowing. I had no idea.
they got a permit to march down Kreshadok Street, the main street in Kyiv. It was a march. When they marched, they marched. They had a marching band and pink balloons. And in that era, it was still not that long after the fall of the Soviet Union, to do a public demonstration was just unheard of. But they got permission. They said, we're doing this for our daughters. And they had a March for Life and Hope. And so I said, the project was winding down, the formal part of it. I said to them, if I'm in the region, how about if I stop by and we can meet again and all? And I'll help support you. You tell me how we can help. I had some staff, and we had our breast cancer patient advocates in the US. And so they said, yes, we would love that. And then in 2003, I was making a trip to the Baltic countries with a local Seattle group called the Center for Women and Democracy. And we were accompanied by our Swedish colleagues, and we were meeting with business and professional women in the Baltic countries. And so I said the trip was ending in Lithuania, and they had a strong breast cancer support movement there. And so I talked with their breast cancer advocacy movement. I said, what if I bring some Ukrainians, maybe some of the other former Soviet countries, their leaders of patient advocacy groups, and we'll meet in Lithuania, and they can see what you're doing, and they won't be comparing themselves to the US in movement. They'll be comparing themselves to what you've been able to create in Lithuania. And so we brought them, we had our first little meeting, and they all bonded, and they said, we need to keep doing this. So I was able, every 2 years, then for many years after that, we rotated countries. The next one was in Kyiv, and we all marched in the March for Life and Hope they held. And we rotated through. We had one in Kyrgyzstan, and
This story is so
Romania.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Because if I think about most other people who have a career in global oncology, they usually start with Africa or South America, or sometimes like the Indian subcontinent.
Yep.
But your journey started from Eastern Europe and the Balkan region.
It was just, it wasn't intentional. It was an accident of sorts. But then you asked me about, I was a professor of global health. Well, they loved to have me come and lecture and be a mentor because everybody else was in the same areas. I was the one, I actually had an appointment. We had a center for Russian, Eastern Europe, and Central Asian countries, and I had an adjunct appointment there. They loved that there was global health work going on in a region that they weren't hearing about all the time.
Like sometimes we talk about global oncology as if it's a thing of distant geography. We have global oncology inside of US and Canada as well, in our own backyard, which we forget. So in that sense, I think especially these Balkan regions and Armenia and Lithuania, and these regions that you're talking about, they have so much of global oncology issues, but they usually don't get talked about when people talk about global oncology.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that is a very fascinating. I have never heard anyone else who developed their career from that geographical region.
And this is like, as I say, this is one of the most rewarding parts of my career, but it was not part of my plan. It was just something that once I participated and said yes to a project, I could have easily backed out of that, but I really liked it and saw it didn't take much to really help light a fire and start a movement in a country. And I could use my title, their respect for United States breast specialists, to come in and help them grow. And I ended up calling that, after we had a couple of meetings, I said, we need a name for this. So we called it We Can, the Women's Empowerment Cancer Advocacy Network. We Can.
That's a very, very appropriate name. Because the name itself motivates you.
And then, we were doing that, having really, every 2 years would have a formal meeting. I would get funding through the University of Washington for sponsorship, and they set the agenda. They said what they wanted to talk about and all. And then because the University of Washington and the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center had a relationship with the Uganda Cancer Institute, I was then kind of invited into Uganda and immediately met the patient advocates there, and they said, we want to do something like what you did in the former Soviet Union. I said, it's going to look different. I know it will. You tell me what it should be, but let's try it. And so that started We Can East Africa.
Okay, so I think there are a couple of points that I want to highlight for the audience here. I think they also keep asking me, what I should do 5 years from now, 10 years from now. From your story, I think one thing that I want to highlight is life does not always go according to plan. So as Julie mentioned, her global health and oncology involvement in these countries, they were not a part of the plan from upfront. It was just embracing opportunities as they come through. And if your philosophy and enthusiasm aligns with that opportunity, then you just take it forward. So I don't think, I think the audience would know that you don't need to figure out your whole life at the beginning of
Nope.
your journey because you can't see what's going to happen in the next corner. You just should keep walking until you reach the next corner.
Right.
Yeah.
And, that path that you take, you might try something and say, no, that wasn't for me, and
Yeah.
go back and try other things. I mean, I do think global oncology is more respected as a field
Yes.
now than it was in the 1990s. It wasn't anything
Yeah.
then. And so I did have to, you know, be a thought leader in breast cancer and be a
Yes.
clinical trialist and keep up my work so I could get promoted.
Mhm.
I did have to work on getting grant funding and writing papers. Luckily, I got hooked up with a crew, both
Mhm.
international colleagues and my local colleagues, and we did some research out of the patient engagement thing. We did focus groups and questionnaires, and we tried some pilots and had a network of people where we were publishing and we were getting some grant
Yeah.
money.
I think
So we had to keep it
that
up.
is tied with the question that I wanted to ask. You have already answered indirectly that some of our young early career people, they want to know if they if they build a career in global oncology, it entails a lot of traveling and being away from like clinical work, and the institution may or may not support that type
Right.
of career all the time. How challenging was it for you to do this type of work in all senses as an early career people when
Yeah.
you started this, as well as afterwards when the institution had expectations that you would see more patients, and how you protected time for research, protected time for travel, so that how to deal with institution to convince the institution that a career in global oncology is worth pursuing.
Well, I was fortunate to
Mhm.
be in Seattle because both the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center and the University of Washington are big global health hubs. I didn't have to convince them about the global health piece. The oncology piece, they were very interested in how do we pursue this. Also, Seattle is the hub. We have, the Gates Foundation and many other NGOs there that are very globally focused. So I was in an area that kind of bought into the, yes, global health and global oncology are important. I did in my academic, career path, have resistance. I absolutely was told you're out of the country too much, or you shouldn't get so close to patients. Absolutely heard that.
Oh, you shouldn't get close to patients as well.
Well, also I had,
Huh.
we haven't talked about Team Survivor Northwest yet, but about that group.
Yeah.
That was happening at the same time
Uh-huh.
of in Seattle, starting a group, co-founded a group, which is 30 years strong, of helping women, cancer patients and survivors get physical activity and healthy lifestyles in.
Uh-huh.
And so that was also getting close to patients.
Uh-huh.
I climbed mountains with them and did marathons with them and did
With
bike rides
patients.
with patients. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love mountain climbing and trekking. That was the patients. Team Survivor Northwest said, let's go climb Mount Rainier, which is in Seattle. And we probably shouldn't have chosen the highest peak in the state as the first one. But, with Team Survivor Northwest, I've climbed the 5 highest peaks in Washington and Oregon, and I
For
climbed
the
Mount
record,
Kilimanjaro for my 50th birthday.
yeah.
And I went to Everest Base Camp in
Yes,
your home country,
that's what I was
Nepal.
about to say. For the record, Julie has been to the Everest Base Camp.
Yeah. But my love of mountain climbing was I got with these dynamic patient advocates and we said, let's all find what we like to do. And for some it was we had an urban hiking group and they would meet once a week at a set place and they'd go hiking around Seattle, different places. But we then had we started with the sprint triathlon and you could do any piece of it. You could just do
Okay.
the biking piece or the running piece, which you could walk, or the swimming piece, or you could do the whole thing, or you could do it as a team. So that got my interest in healthy lifestyles and physical activity and all.
Yeah, no, that's very, very, I think, inspiring for our audience to learn the whole holistic aspect of your personality and how you tied that with your work. And you were telling a story about you getting involved in Africa as well for global oncology work. I know that there are some very fascinating personal stories with wildlife encounters as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the patient advocates there were just so willing to talk to each other, work together, and learn from each other. I love that we at the second conference that we did in East Africa, we had about $5,000 left over from our budget,
Okay.
and which
Uh-huh.
is not very much in a high income country, but in a
Yeah.
low. So what we decided to do was
And at that
give.
time, there was no aortic conference or aortic organized.
Aortic
Yeah.
existed, but
Okay.
it got reinvigorated afterwards. And so we said, we'll give out 5 $1,000 grants.
Okay.
We will work with you, teach you how to write
Mhm.
a grant application.
Uh-huh.
We will select, and then you have to report back. And it just is, tell us what you would do with this $1,000 to promote breast cancer awareness. We then added cervical cancer in Africa because it made sense to combine the two. What you would do to promote it. And so they got grant writing training. They had the conduct and reporting of their project. And then they got confidence they could apply for grants. So my example in Uganda is they submitted a grant for $1,000 and said, what we're going to do is we're going to take our female parliamentarians to lunch.
Okay.
And tell them about breast and cervical cancer and see how we can partner to raise awareness in our country. That was what they were going to do with their $1,000. And it was very successful. And they were already fairly strongly connected with the Uganda Cancer Institute, but it strengthened that connection. And then UWACASA, the Uganda Women's Cancer Support Organization, said, we know how to write a grant now. So they next wrote a grant to UICC, the Union for International Cancer Control, and they got one of those Spark grants that they had, which was $20,000. And it was enough so that their executive director, who was an accountant, so she was good with money and good with management, she could quit her day job. And they did a project. They got the UICC grant. They've written subsequent grants. Gertrude then got put on the Uganda Cancer Institute board because they were such a professional organization, and they would go to the Uganda Cancer Institute and ask, please introduce us to the newly diagnosed breast and cervical patients. And they were found to be so useful by the oncologists at UCI that they're like, oh, UWACASA isn't here today. I have a patient for them. And they talked to the patient, and they were spread out through the whole country, and they would help them get in and travel. And if the patient kind of missed a visit, they would go and, try to see what was going on.
This is such a great example of, how one little action at the beginning can lead to such important developments. Like, I have seen so many people who got an idea grant, for instance, which is not a big deal. It is like
It's a big deal.
no, as in in terms of monetary
not much
amount.
money.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like the idea recipient can spend 3 days with a mentor in US or Canada.
And come to our annual meeting.
Yes. And then that opportunity, it like spirals into, through the mentor, they get to know other 10 different people, other specialists, and then they will, like we have several examples of people who started from an idea grant, then they got a YIA or a Global Oncology YIA. The same person gets a CDA or a Life Award, and becomes one of the most important voices in oncology all over the world. So this example that you talked about, which started with a $1,000 grant money and teaching how to write a grant, which spiraled into getting a UICC grant, and this fits into very neatly with the concept of how we should start from whatever we can, regardless of the amount. But if we are doing this with a good intention, it can spiral into this positive spiraling effect, the ripples, and you can never imagine where the ripples will go. It can go to a far distance. So Julie, after like I don't think it's like an before and after thing, but I think you were also starting to get involved with ASCO while doing all of these activities. So when did your involvement with ASCO start?
Well, I became an ASCO member as a fellow in the early 1990s.
Okay.
In 1995, I received a Career Development Award,
Okay.
which really kickstarted my career. That was my first grant, right? And ASCO does make a commitment. If you get a grant or award, we look for a committee to put you on, and we
Yes.
try to help network. So I was then and I ended that research, ended up with an oral presentation at ASCO early in my career. I was then, my first committee was what was then called Public Issues Committee. Probably it's government relations now.
I see.
And I was
So
on the
you were in
Public
that
Issues
committee that
Committee.
goes to Capitol Hill and
Yeah.
yeah.
And then they made me the co-chair of the patient issues subcommittee of that early on. And then I said yes when they asked me. So I served on, some of the breast cancer guidelines committees. I served on the communications committee and then chaired that committee. I served on the international affairs committee way back when. Lots of other committees and, did writing and stuff for ASCO. I was asked, this won't surprise you, we decided to have a task force out of the International Affairs Committee on academic global oncology.
Oh, okay.
And
Is the global curriculum a result of that?
No,
Okay.
but it tied into
Okay.
it. Was that the ESMO ASCO
Yeah.
global curriculum? The first version had already been started,
Okay.
but it kind of tied into that. So I was asked to chair that. And we issued a paper on academic global oncology. We first defined what global oncology was, and then we went through what are some of the perceived barriers and looked into the way our fellowship training program, what do our boards require, and learned that a lot of our programs had misconceptions about how much time or where you could do your continuity clinics or what kind of oversight. And then we looked at basic guiding principles for global oncology. Respect your colleagues, put them on papers, give them, the credit.
The right way to
The
do
right way to do it. It's bi-directional. It should have gains for both sides. And we put all those principles out. And so that was another piece that I did. And so I was very involved with ASCO. I think what's now called FASCO, the Fellow of ASCO, which is everybody wants that designation, and congratulations, you just got your FASCO designation. Originally, it was called what was it called? It had a different name at first when it was an idea that came out, and I got one of the first ones, and then it became FASCO. So I did a lot with it, and I think though, when the opportunity came for this chief medical officer role, it was a pandemic, and
so this was in 2020?
I took the job in I think 2021.
Okay.
Early, like February 2021. So ASCO had only had one prior chief medical officer, Rich Shulsky. He was the inaugural one. He kind of set the job, but ASCO was ready and the board was ready as Rich retired to make a global impact. And so I interviewed.
ASCO has a Center for Global Impact now.
We do. After I joined ASCO, we decided instead of just a Department of International Affairs, we will create a Center for Global Impact. And our strategic plan at that point, we put make a global impact across everything we did. So that was why I stood out in this role, because I know how to do clinical trials. I also oversee our Center for Research and Analytics. I had experience with the Public Issues Committee and some of the policy and advocacy. That's another department I oversee. But I was one of the few people that had that, plus the global piece. So I kind of took on the role, and
I can easily see why ASCO wanted you, but I wanted to know your motivation at that point in your career, why you thought you wanted to take on this job. Like you thought like, okay, I have seen enough patients. I don't want to do clinical work anymore.
I was totally planning on riding out
Uh-huh.
my career another 7 to 10 years in Seattle.
Uh-huh.
I was looking at my succession plan for who would take over the program leadership.
Uh-huh.
I was starting to work on that because I didn't want to be the breast program lead
Uh-huh.
for another 7 to 10 years. But I was perfectly comfortable riding out my career. My husband, was starting to look at going part-time, and then this position opened up. It was the middle of the pandemic, so I think we all rethought a lot about what we wanted, and I looked at that job description and said, this would be a great job for somebody.
Uh-huh.
And I just didn't think about applying at first.
Oh, okay.
And
So you thought this would be a great job for someone else. Yeah.
I didn't think this is my job. It would have been so
Yeah.
comfortable
Yeah.
to just write out my career and not throw myself
Yeah.
into a new role and work living in Seattle, in Washington, D.C.,
Yeah.
and going cross country. It would have been comfortable, but then some of my former mentees started texting me and emailing me and saying, this is you, this description is you. And so it was actually my former trainees, my former faculty who said, this is you.
Yeah.
So I kind of reached out to some of my colleagues and friends at ASCO, said, tell me about what this job would be.
Yeah.
So I still hadn't thrown my hat in the ring.
Okay.
I was just feeling it out to see, could I do this? And then I threw my CV in and went through a round of interviews and talked to my husband about how are we going to make this work, because we weren't going to move our primary home from Seattle.
He's an emergency doctor,
He's anesthesiology.
anesthesiologist,
Yeah.
but also a pilot. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a private pilot. We have a little plane. And so, but it was like my career was comfortable. This was another one where I didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Yeah.
And
No, we are very thankful that you
I am thankful I
Yeah.
did. It's a great job and great opportunity. And ASCO has the name and the reputation. In my role as ASCO's Chief Medical Officer, I can meet with people who I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I can bring, especially in that global piece, I can say, I'm coming to your country for this conference. You want to meet with the Minister of Health? Let's go, talk with them about what's your national cancer control plan.
Yeah.
And I can use ASCO's name and convening power and then bring the people from the country and the region together and help that. And so use ASCO's name and reputation for good.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And do you know from ASCO's standpoint, why or what was the motivation for ASCO to think more globally? Previously it was more US centric.
Right.
Now,
Well,
now 40,
is American.
yeah. Now I think 40% of the members are
That's right.
international.
That's right.
And ASCO, right now we are chatting in Singapore. This is being recorded in Singapore for ASCO Breakthrough 2026 annual meeting. And ASCO is doing a lot of international activities and supporting international colleagues with multiple global oncology related grants and awards as well. So was there like a pivot point that made ASCO think like, okay, now we should go global, or was it more of a natural progression in the course?
Well, our international membership was growing. As you say, it's about 40% now that are not US. And
I can quote all of these statistics because I am a part of International Affairs Committee.
Right.
So
But we have members in 172 countries, and so we were looking at why do they want to be ASCO members and what can we give them? And so we decided to form a series of regional councils. The original plan was it would be a regional council for 3 years and then it would disband. That they would just advise the original plan, which predated me, was we couldn't have enough staff and time to have regional councils throughout the world. So we'll do one. Asia Pacific was the first. And they said, one of the first things they said was, we want an ASCO meeting in our region, which is why we're in Singapore. We're at our fourth ASCO breakthrough meeting in Asia Pacific. But we came on board, and then next was Latin America, then Sub-Saharan Africa, then Eastern Central Europe is the most recent one. And we went to them and said, what ASCO programs and services can we adapt for you? Is there something missing? We can't do everything. but, how can we work together? Asia Pacific also said, we want a leadership development program, culturally sensitive for our area, modeled after the great ASCO leadership
Yeah.
development program, which you also
Yes.
were part of. And Latin America came in and said, we want an opportunity to not just be trained in clinical trials, but to compete for some grants just among ourselves and so that the subject matter might be something that we couldn't get approved in a US system because they don't think it's important, but in Latin America, it's
Yeah.
very important. So that we were able to kick off our Every Grant program in Latin America with quality improvement grants in breast cancer that Pfizer funded in partnership. But it was the Latin America Regional Council that reviewed the grants and awarded the grants, and they're overseeing the grants. And so each regional council has said they had slightly different focus, but then they looked at what the other regional
Yeah.
councils doing and said, hey, we want that too.
No, I think our audience should be aware of all these opportunities that are available through ASCO. Like I personally, I think I owe a lot of my own career to these opportunities that I received from ASCO. My first introduction to ASCO was ASCO's clinical trial workshop in Kathmandu in 2014. That was the first time I came across any ASCO opportunity, and that's where I met Doug for the first time. And Doug keeps telling me that outside of my own family, he's the one who has seen my whole career from a baby in oncology to
when
today.
you were still in Nepal.
Yes. And if I have to recall my ASCO involvement, it will be the first one was the clinical trial workshop. It was very, very transformational for me. And then I would meet a dog at every JASMO. I was in Japan at the Japanese Society of Medical Oncology meeting. He would represent ASCO and come there, and I would talk to him about all the opportunities. And I got involved with the virtual mentorship program at that time. I think I was one of the first virtual mentees through the ASCO's virtual mentorship program. I don't know if that runs nowadays.
Oh, it does.
It does?
Absolutely. And it's growing.
Okay. Then I also was one of the first editorial fellows with the Journal of Global Oncology.
Yep.
At the time, it had just started. So I was the first editorial fellow for JCO Global Oncology now. Then I got the Global Oncology YIA. I graduated from the ASCO Leadership Program. And now I'm with the ASCO International Office Committee, just to tell the audience that there are so many opportunities with ASCO, regardless of where you are. I forgot the International Clinical Research Scholars Program. I am a mentor for a colleague from Uruguay, the South American version. So there are different regional councils. There are different, what do you call that? One is the regional council. The other one is that we have in India. It's not a regional council.
Well, it's an advisory. We formed an India advisory group.
Yeah, advisory group.
And stay tuned. We're going to have some interesting information on that in the very near future. But exciting news. I don't know when this is going to air, but we currently have open the Asia Pacific round 3 of the Leadership Development Program.
Okay.
And our regional council here met a couple days ago in Singapore, and they agreed to let the Indian subcontinent apply for the Asia Pacific Leadership Development Program. That's breaking news.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So India, Nepal, Bangladesh, they will all be able to apply, and applications are open now and they close in early August. So
wow, we should release this podcast as soon as we can.
well, we have to do a little social media thing, and we were waiting for the regional council to approve it, so we'll probably do it on Monday.
Okay.
But no, really exciting that the regional council voted that was one of the consequences of this was, let's bring in, the rest of the Asian continent.
And my idea mentee from this year, she's from Albania, and she just told me last week that she got accepted into the leadership program of ASCO in the Central Europe.
In Central and Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Oh, great. So I mean, these regional councils are really there as a rotating 3-year term to kind of represent their countries. And the Asia Pacific is, we're in Singapore, so I thought a lot about it. Very high income countries and very low income countries. And also you ask, why did ASCO make this decision and all? Part of the reason that the international membership has grown in the last several years is we made a very conscious decision about 2 years ago to offer free membership to low and lower middle income countries. And we have a marked reduction for an upper middle income country. And trainees are always in very earliest career are free as well. So that grew our international membership. But the point isn't just to have numbers, it's actually to make that membership worthwhile.
Yes.
You
And
know,
to make a difference in their careers.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many things to talk about. There is so little time. I want to highlight a couple of aspects from your career that will be inspirational to the audience. I want to talk about mentorship. And of course, we are going to talk about how you support women, but I want to clarify that it's not just women. Like Julie has supported me. And Julie has, like yesterday, you introduced Long, our new CSO fellow, to all of us there. So you have been supporting early career people from LMICs, from high income countries. Um, your support counts so much because it is not a person, Julie Gralow, supporting, but it also feels like ASCO as an institution is behind our career as early career people. But let's talk specifically about your support for women in oncology, because I always find your slide where you open that glass door. And I joked today morning as well, because we also have a glass door here, because Julie has a slide in her talk where she is literally opening a glass door and she says like opening the door for women in oncology.
Right.
So how did that come about?
Yeah.
That story behind it, and you know, just to give a few tangible examples, I introduced you to one of my fellows, Laurent, who you are a sponsor for her.
We first met in Tunisia.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you introduced Saida Mina to me, who is now my virtual
That's
fellow.
right.
So you have been sponsoring and mentoring early career as well as LMICs, women faculty in oncology for a long time now, but even before you were an ASCO CMO. So how did that all start? What was the motivation for you? And also in the background of, as a woman in oncology yourself, who has had, let's say, the pinnacle of success, you are the ASCO CMO. So we can talk about what you want to do after this, but what were the challenges that you personally faced, or maybe you did not have to face, but you saw other face and you wanted to make a difference? Or did you personally face any barriers in your own career because you were a woman, and how you faced or dismantled those barriers? I just wanted to hear all this from you.
I am fortunate that when I entered medicine, my predecessors had paved the way.
Okay.
I cannot think of an obvious example where, as a woman in medicine, I was discriminated against because of my gender. But early on, I chose to go into breast oncology because I had bonded with the breast cancer patients in my practice, and I formed my team Survivor Northwest Group, which is for women with cancer. And then my WeCan work was the women's, empowerment, advocacy network. And so I was around women, but women in academics, not as much at that time. Like I was empowering the patients and the advocates and all. The story that you told is the City Cancer Challenge, which evolved out of a UICC project. It's its own independent organization now. It focuses on partnering at a city level at improving cancer care capacity. And they they looked at what was needed, and they looked across all the cities that they work in, and they decided to start a leadership program for women in oncology as part of City Cancer Challenge. So they took applications and picked one woman from each of their cities. So they're in their second round now, but the first round, and it was all across, they're all low and lower middle income cities, but they picked, I think the first round was 12 cities. And we met in Geneva for the first round, and I met with them there, and they just all bonded immediately, from Latin America, from Asia Pacific, from Eastern Europe and Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. They just all bonded, and we had a little party. One of the embassies from one of the countries that was part of the leadership program, they held a little reception. So we got to the reception, and there was this big glass door, and we were like, it was really heavy, and we were like trying to open it, and it was a kind of a joke that we couldn't get into the embassy. And so then I was holding the door open, and we all went in and had a good time. And then like the next day, I saw on social media a post that said, that had a picture of a heavy glass door that said, "We are open, the door is just heavy." And somebody had posted it and written above it, "This is academia to women in academia." And then somebody below said, "Yeah, but once you get through it, you should hold the door open for people who follow." So we took a picture of that happening. And then somebody posted, "And once you get that door open, we should rip out that door and just make it a door that you support everybody." So then 6 months later, some of us were at the aortic meeting. I think it was Dakar, and I was standing at a door. One of my staff and a couple of the leadership program for women in oncology were at that meeting, and the door actually said "heavy door." So I'm leading the way through, and then we have a picture with the leadership program for women in oncology following me, and my staff is holding the door open. So that's been kind of our theme and our joke, but that is what it's about. I was privileged. I had a lot of luck and, took some opportunities, and, I could create the opportunity to hold the door open for those who follow, whether they be female or male. But many of the other, I personally don't think I can give you an example of a discrimination, but in a lot of these other countries, it's very obvious when I go there.
And Julie, I noticed that sometimes when I introduce my female colleagues or mentees to you, I think for someone you become a mentor, for someone you become a sponsor. So what's
my life now is mostly sponsorship, when the difference being a formal mentorship, which I did in my academic career, and I clearly had fellows and junior faculty. It was obvious I was part of their career trajectory. I needed to meet with them and discuss things and help them get promoted. But that was like my job, and it was formal. A lot of what I've done, I would really say, is more sponsorship, which is finding opportunities, making introductions, meeting occasionally to see how things are going. But there are people on the ground more connected in their career pathway who are their formal mentors. And I know a lot of people now. I'm well connected. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is meet somebody, hear about, what they're doing, where they see themselves in 5 and 10 years, and say, okay, here's somebody else doing exactly that, or let's introduce you. And that's also, ASCO is a good connector, but I can use my ASCO role to be a good connector. So that's more sponsorship. And then there's allyship, which we talked about this morning. We had, I think, 30 or 40 women at our women's networking little breakfast this morning here at our ASCO breakthrough meeting. And we said women and allies. So men were invited as allies. And there it's just not having the one-to-one connection, but supporting the cause. And so that's the allyship.
So Julie, in your opinion, what makes someone a good mentor?
Well, and it's also what
I'm asking this for myself. I want to be a good mentor.
Yeah, but it's also what makes somebody a good mentee as well. I really do think it's the mentor is responsible for making sure that there's structure and that there's progress. Okay. And as a mentor at a given institution, it's understanding that institution. It's understanding what will be needed to get to the 5 and 10-year plan. In academics, it's what's going to be needed for promotion. It's looking. I've had people tell me that I'm the first person that ever asked to look at the CV and then gave feedback on their CV. Like a lot of times we'll get sent somebody's CV, but I have been known to look at it and say, hey, I know you. you're not selling yourself well enough here.
Yeah.
Here's how I would structure this
Yeah.
or play this up. It's looking to make sure that there is a plan and that they're on target and it's sometimes being frankly honest and saying, you aren't meeting this goal and I don't think you're passionate about it. So let's talk about, should we change up what your 5-year plan is or what your strategy, or find a better connection, for you, what's going on. And it's also speaking up if there's a problem at the administration level or something where they're falling a bit behind. It's also protecting the mentee, but it's also, I say, it's bi-directional, because
So what makes someone a good mentee?
well, a good mentee is being organized, respecting your mentor's time. And when you do have your periodic meetings and everything, really being organized and bringing the progress and being honest as well. And not just doing something because you think that's what your institution or your mentor thinks you should be doing, but being honest about, I am really struggling with this, and this gets back to the women's issues. This may seem minor, but my institution had very strict rules about if you had a morning clinic, it was 8 to 12. And if you had an afternoon clinic, it was 1 to 5. And that's that. And I had some young faculty members who it would mean all the world to them if they could start their clinic at 8:30 because they could get their kids to school in the morning. And the institution said no. And I'm like, but we've got an hour where the clinic rooms aren't full and everything. And so I went to bat for them and said, this would be huge in their lives. And it's not a big inconvenience. You just stagger the rest of the staff in clinic too. And you've got empty rooms for an hour at lunchtime. Why wouldn't you want to stagger people and make use of that hour of unused clinic space? So it's understanding what's going on in their personal life a bit, not needing to know all the details, but if there's something that their work is interfering with, and going to bat for them and getting the institution. And then once I did it for one of my junior faculty members, multiple other faculty members say, hey, this is great. Or I'd be willing to start at 7:30 to make, to make more of a staggered approach. Or I'd like to get done early so I can pick up my kids from school. So it opened it up and it caused the institution to think, aha, we can actually make better use of our clinic space, our infusion room space, all of that, if we have a little bit of a staggered approach.
No,
So it's being responsive. So a good mentee should be honest, but should be organized. And a good mentor should listen and see where they can help and be honest if they see there's a problem at figuring out how to help fix that.
No, thank you. This is very, very useful. I think I have taken a lot of your time, but I do have a couple of questions that I really wanted.
Okay.
So yeah, we can make it quick. Of all these roles that you have played so far, which one has been your favorite?
In my academic career?
Yeah, like right now as an ASCO CMO, previously as the professor, or as a mentor, or as a pipette doing bench lab undergrad.
I would have to say that the thing that's fulfilled me the most, and I sometimes say this is what I mainly want on my tombstone, is the patient empowerment piece. That is probably the thing, and that was never a formal role, right? But that's the thing that has been the most fulfilling. My relationships with my patients, their families, patients that aren't my own patients, but around the world, that's the most fulfilling. I love the global piece and getting to know my colleagues and the people around the world. I love that as well.
One more question. I call your someone's title or number of publications, number of citations, wealth as the surrogate markers of success. For you, what is the true marker of success?
Oh, that's a good question, because I did fight, and in that academic global oncology, I said, you might not get as much grant money or publish as much. There should be an alternative metric for success. So it kind of gets at what your question is. So let me let me think about, um, I have to say, and this is a weird metric. I'm not saying it should be anybody else's metric, but I have colleagues
Mhm.
and friends
Mhm.
in so many countries around the world.
Uh-huh.
And I love being the go-to person when they say, oh, I'm hearing about
Uh-huh.
a cancer patient here. Do you know a doctor in this country? And I almost always do. And that is a weird metric, and I wouldn't suggest it be anybody else's. But last night, we had a fun event. We went on a
Yes.
Singapore flyer,
Yeah. That's
and
amazing.
it was
Thank you for mentioning
amazing.
that.
Yeah, it's a big Ferris wheel here in Singapore. And I was talking to one of the people in my capsule who is from Australia, but was born in New Guinea.
Oh,
And
okay.
I said, oh wow, then how did you get there? I said, I've been to Papua New Guinea. Scuba. And he's like, of all the people in the world, you are the one person that I would guess has been to New Guinea.
Yeah.
And like, I'm a little bit proud of that
Yeah.
because I love the world.
Uh-huh.
And and it's not just counting how many countries I've been to. I love connecting around the world. I think almost everybody in the world has the same, goals of wanting world peace and education and food and housing. And, they want their kids to grow up,
Yeah.
healthy and happy. And if we really truly reached out and made relationships, we probably wouldn't have war. So
Sure.
that's a weird metric,
Yeah.
but that's going to be my
Yeah.
answer.
Oh, that's a very satisfying answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you were not an oncologist, what do you think you would have been?
Well, I think you've asked me this before, so you might know my answer, but when I was a little girl,
Yeah.
like in kindergarten, and people would ask me that question, I was a smart little girl, so I kind of said, oh, you know, a doctor.
Yeah.
But then I said, or a movie star or a princess. And like when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a princess or a movie star or a doctor,
Yeah.
So, I definitely would not be a princess or a movie star anymore.
Yeah.
But if I wasn't a doctor, I would be in public health for sure.
Not a chef at a restaurant, at a Michelin star restaurant, because you have written a cookbook.
Oh, and I gave you a
Yeah.
copy of the cookbook. No, I love cooking and I love food. No, but I'm not innovative enough. I'm good at redoing other people's recipes, but I'm not good at being an innovator. Although I did here in Singapore as part of a tour that I took on Tuesday, had their famous
Uh-huh.
chicken rice dish
Okay.
that
Uh-huh.
at a hawker stand,
Yeah.
but the dish
Uh-huh.
has Michelin star, like not the
Oh,
hawker stand,
okay.
but the dish
Huh.
has Michelin star chicken rice from
Yeah.
Singapore, a very famous local dish. So I even got a little Michelin star chicken rice here in Singapore.
Yeah. Okay, final like rapid fire type questions. As in, what does Julie Gralow do for fun?
Oh, I have fun.
Mhm.
And this has been, you heard early on in this, I met my husband in college,
Uh-huh.
and the work-life balance and how do we do all of this? Um, and a lot of the fun does get to the mountain climbing and all the outdoor stuff. But early on, we bought a house, an island house north of Seattle. Beautiful, up just right on the border of Canada. And I realized I needed to commit with my husband's schedule and my schedule that block out weekends
Mhm.
in advance for when we were going to go up to our island house
Uh-huh.
and commit to, because I was doing too many talks and too much travel and just commit to that and block it out early because the island time
Mhm.
is our family time and our downtime. We have a dog. We're on our third dog of our relationship now. We just had our 40th wedding anniversary, and the dog goes up there. We have a boat up there. And so we go out and we've had now 3 lengths of boat work, and we will go out for a week in the boat. I have Starlink on the boat so I can do Zoom
Oh.
calls from the boat. We have
People work from home, you work from boat.
Yeah, I mean, we have the orca whale come by in front of our house up there, and we do hiking on the island, and so you know, that the island is my downtime.
Yeah.
And we always joke about
Mhm.
we get to the island and we're still business mode coming from the city and everything. And we have a 9 mile drive out to our house there. We fly in our little plane. And by the time we get there, we go through a national park. We've usually seen some deer and eagle, foxes. We get to our house and we are on island time. So,
Yeah.
recharge the batteries there. So that's what's kept me sane and what's kept our protected,
Mhm.
relationship time
Yeah.
going.
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, well, I'll tell you the movie I'm going to watch on the plane on the way home is Crazy Rich Asians, which was filmed in Singapore
Yeah.
because I saw it years ago.
You
And
haven't
now,
watched it yet?
no, I saw
Oh,
it years
okay.
ago, but now I've been to all these places this week
Yeah.
that they filmed it. And I want to see it. I'm not saying
Okay.
that's my favorite movie, but it is the movie I'm next planning on watching.
You watch movies very like often or not?
Um, uh, we, I don't go out to a movie theater as much anymore. But we will watch them in our downtime and, on a big screen TV at home with the dog, and cuddle up. And so we usually see them not right when they're first released in the theater, but at home.
Your favorite book?
Oh, well, that's another hard one. I mean, I love to read. I love a murder mystery.
Okay.
That's my relaxing
Really?
night
Yeah.
after a busy day
I
or
don't
on
think
an airplane.
most people would have guessed that you would like.
Well, right now, the book I'm reading is by Louise Penny, one of my favorite authors in that genre. She's got her Inspector Gamache, who's in the Quebec, and I love all of her characters and all. And I'm reading, I think it's her latest that she wrote with Melissa. I'm gonna get the last name wrong, Tang, I think. And I picked it up and started reading it on the plane on the way over because a lot of it has to do with China and the White House and all going on. And I got halfway through it and she puts a lot of excitement and everything in it. And I'm like, I can't put this down, but I've got to go to the breakthrough meeting.
Yeah.
So I'm not answering your question again about my one favorite book, but the genre would be
Okay, murder mysteries.
murder
Yeah.
mysteries, get
I would not have
totally,
expected at all.
totally, wipe my mind and, get rid of some of the day-to-day
Okay.
stuff.
Last question, probably the most controversial one. Outside of USA, which team are you supporting for World Cup, FIFA World Cup?
Oh, so, and USA just lost to Turkey, and I have to say, as an underdog, yay, Turkey. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, but I think it's not consequential for USA. USA has moved to second stage anyway.
I know,
Yeah.
but that was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you, the USA Australia game was played in Seattle, and I was kind of in the city feeling the vibe. I didn't have tickets to the game, and I loved all the Australians that came in to town for the game. I was flying home the night before, and there was all this green and yellow on the plane. I love our USA team, but I could have been perfectly happy with rooting with Australia, because they were so fun. Like, I'm like, I could go and have a beer with them, and, root for Australia.
Martin Stockler was very happy yesterday because Australia drew with Paraguay, so most
So
likely.
now they're
Yeah.
moving forward. So there you go. So yeah, I mean, any good team, I could be happy with. Yeah.
Okay. So you haven't bought a jersey for any.
I'll tell you a very funny story. So we were at years ago in Spain for a meeting, and it was the Euro Cup. Okay, so it wasn't
Yeah,
World Cup,
yeah.
it was the Euro Cup was going on in Spain and Lisbon, I think. And we were with a group of people from the UK and they got us tickets for the UK Croatia game.
Okay.
And so we were going, and they made a jersey for me with a UK jersey with my last name on it.
Oh.
So the night before, I was with my research nurse, and we wanted to go. There was a game going on. I'm trying to remember the story now. I wasn't in Spain, I was in Portugal. Okay, so and there was a local team game going on, and my nurse and I wanted to go feel the local thing. So we went to a pub, and the Croatian fans were there, and they gave us Croatia shirts.
Okay.
And we told them we were going to the UK Croatia game.
Uh-huh.
So what we did was we went
Uh-huh.
to the UK Croatia game, and underneath our UK shirts, we had the Croatia shirts on. And then once UK was far ahead and obviously going to win, we went in the bathroom and pulled off the UK shirts and sat in the UK cheering section wearing Croatia shirts. But we knew that UK was going to win, so I wasn't going to get all the fans really mad at me. And that was a very fun thing. So I do bond over the Croatia team because of that history.
Thank you very much, Julie,
Yes.
for your time today. It has been a very interesting conversation. I'm sure the audience, they will not only enjoy listening to this, but also they have several.
Hopefully I won't get them mad if they have different favorite teams for the World Cup.
But you dedicating this time today during the ASCO breakthrough meeting also speaks to your passion and commitment to mentorship and inspiring the next generation. So on behalf of all people working in the field of global oncology or early career, I still consider myself early career.
You're not early career. You're asking mentorship questions. You are a mentor now.
But I like to thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you very much, Julie.
And thank you for everything you're doing. I love your podcast. I love everything you do. I've been to Kingston. That undergrad class that you teach is so amazing.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I teach an undergrad course on global oncology and cancer policy, and Julie is our guest speaker every year that all the students look forward to because they will have heard about ASCO and they find it unbelievable that they get to hear from the chief medical officer of ASCO herself. And Julie even came in person once, and that was one of the most mind-blowing experiences for them. Even the institution did not believe me that they were. The department was like, "Are you sure Julie is coming?" So thank you very much for your commitment to education and mentorship.
And thanks for everything you do too.
Thank you.